European news, where we get real about football. And now to your hosts, Mike Pagano and Paul Helmers.
All right, guys, we're back right now with Gary Myers. Gary Myers is the author of How About Them Cowboys? Inside the Huddle with the Stars and Legends of America's Team. It's currently available at your local bookstores like Barnes & Nobles. You can also find it on Amazon. Before I bring Gary in, I just want to let you guys know, if you don't already know who he is, he's a former columnist over at the New York Daily News, currently contributing at The Athletic. He's authored several books, to include the New York Times bestseller Brady vs. Manning. He's been doing this since 1978. He's currently a host on WFAN. And, he's also a voter for the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Just a list of accomplishments and different things that you should know who he is if you watch football. But without further ado, hey, how you doing, Gary?
What's going on this afternoon, fellas?
Oh, just a beautiful day in Dallas with the rain.
It hasn't. I've been here for about 48 hours now, and it has not stopped raining the whole time.
No, we're supposed to be getting rain till Saturday, last I checked. At least Paul's in Arizona, so, they just have dry sun.
It's sunny today in Phoenix, but it's been cloudy for the past few weeks.
Awesome. So, Gary, I'm extremely excited to have you on here. When I started looking at the book, I just got it last night, so I'm actually going to be honest with you. I haven't gotten through the whole thing yet. Because okay. I just got it, but I'm excited reading through it. It's very interesting. But the first thing I wanted to ask you is, you have a lot of great work, especially, as I mentioned, the New York Times bestseller, Brady vs. Manning. What led you to go this route? What brought you to this book? What was your journey to decide to write this one?
Well, Michael, I worked at the Dallas Morning News from 1981 to 89, and it was the best time I ever had in my career. It was a morning news versus the Times Herald. It was a great newspaper battle, probably the best, ever. And I was covering the Cowboys, and that was the battleground for the newspaper war. And it was just a lot of fun knowing that the Cowboys were the most important beat at the paper. And then I went to New York in 1989, and I still was able to write a lot about the Cowboys, but mainly about the Giants and Jets. But I maintained relationships in Dallas. I overlapped for about 4 or 5 months with Jerry Jones and Jimmy Johnson after Jerry bought the team, and then I moved back to New York, like I mentioned. So I've always, kept in touch with Jerry. And about a year and a half ago, I was trying to come up with an idea for a book, and I've always wanted to write a book about the Cowboys. So my initial thought was, why are they still the most popular team in the world, and why are they the most valuable team in the world when they haven't been to the Super Bowl in over 20 years. And so that was my premise as I started out. And it just kind of grew from there, where it became an all-encompassing look at this franchise with chapters about the Landry years, the Jimmy and Jerry years, and the, as I call it, the Jerry without Jimmy years.
Awesome. That is extremely interesting. Just what you say is, me and Paul talk about this off air sometimes, and I know Paul's got a couple questions about it, but I've always wondered, how is it that they are, you like you said, they've just been in the spotlight for so long. They really do have that title. Even if you're like a Seahawks fan like myself and you don't like saying it, they're America's team, and you can't deny it at all.
No, they are, and it really started, I think, in the mid '60s when they were an expansion team from 1960, and before you knew it, they were playing Lombardi's Packers in back-to-back years for what was then the NFL championship. They lost 2 heartbreaking games. And I think they became a really lovable, overachieving underdog that football fans embraced. I live in New York now, and there's a huge Cowboys fan club in Manhattan. And you say, well, why? Why would they? You have the Giants and Jets. Why is there a Cowboys fan club? Well, from 1964 to 1980, the Giants didn't make the playoffs. And fans were fed up with them. So they adopted the Cowboys. A lot of fans adopted the Cowboys. And, then Roger Staubach went from the Naval Academy, and he got to the Cowboys in 1969, and he became the last great American sports hero. And people were really into that. And then you had the cheerleaders. And then the Cowboys they volunteered to be on the late afternoon game on Thanksgiving. Nobody else wanted it.
Yep.
And says, I'll take it because it'll give us a lot of exposure and visibility. So they put themselves out there, so people would. So they'd always be on. They were on the late afternoon game on Sunday afternoons. They put themselves in a position where the networks fell in love with them, and TV is so big in the branding of these organizations now, and it just grew from there. I mean, it is the highest rated games all season are always Cowboy games, and that's pretty much true regardless of whether they're any good or not.
That is the truth. And when you said that about the Cowboys fans in New York, it made me laugh because, like I said, I'm actually originally from New Jersey, South Jersey, Philly country. So, as you know, living up there's that split in New Jersey where it's all Jets and New York Giants fans, and then you go south too far and you're in Eagles country. But there's so many Cowboys fans there where I'm from in New Jersey, and it's like you said. I mean, the teams there don't do that well, and they go through their periods, and as we know, the Eagles had some long periods, and people just pick up the Cowboys.
Yeah, I mean, they became everybody. At a time when fans were getting fed up with with their own teams, like you mentioned, in Philly and in New York, the Cowboys became the alternative team, and then they started winning Super Bowls, and those fans in those cities were saying, the heck with those teams, with our teams. We're going to become Cowboy fans. And I saw Daryl Johnston the other night here in Dallas, and I was kidding him that the final game of the 1993 season, the Cowboys were playing the Giants at Giant Stadium, and the winner was going to be the number 1 seed in the playoffs, and the loser was going to be the number 5 seed. So winning this game was crucial. It was going to make the difference, most likely, in who got to the Super Bowl. And every time Daryl Johnston carried the ball for the Cowboys, his nickname was Moose. Mm-hmm. Every time he carried the ball, the Moose calls were really loud at Giant Stadium. I'm thinking, how is this possible? The Giants' season is at stake right here, possibly an eventual trip to the Super Bowl. And you got fans cheering for Daryl Johnston every time he touches the ball. And you really see this in stadiums all over the country. I don't think that the Cowboy fans themselves travel that well, like Steeler fans, you find them all over the country, traveling with the team from Pittsburgh. But there's so many Cowboy fans in each away city that the Dallas fans really don't, it's not even necessary for them to travel to support them on the road because they have their own group in probably in every NFL city.
Now, I was really interested in what was it really like to witness Jerry Jones kind of come in and take over the Cowboys, almost guns blazing. I mean, he threw it all on the line and takes over the Cowboys, immediately fires Landry. What was that all like?
Yeah, I mean, I lived through that because it was a few months before I left Dallas, and it was intense. I'll tell you that. He scraped together every penny he had to buy that team, and then to walk into a situation where, he fires Tom Landry, who was an icon here for nearly 30 years. And the heat that he took as a result of that was just really intense. The opening press conference, I actually felt bad for him. He thought it was the greatest day of his life. And the Dallas media was just attacking him. And it had to be really difficult where he wanted to be thrilled for what he just accomplished by buying this team. On the other hand, nobody but his family seemed to be happy for him. And he had to be really thick-skinned early on to fight through it.
Right, and I was reading in your book, you were talking about you were really the first one to start kind of going after the Cowboys instead of clearing your stories through their brain trust and everything. So, did you worry at all about maybe losing access to the team, or did you think maybe it could have any negative effects?
Well, sure. I mean, that's the risk you take. And I think my approach was I wanted the players to know that if they had a good story to tell, that I'd always be willing to listen. Not always willing to write it, but at least willing to listen if I thought it had merit. The risk with that, and there was a high reward to that, but the risk with that was alienating the management of the team, who you want to have a good relationship with. I mean, it works both ways. You want the players to trust you, but you also want management to trust you. And it's a very hard thing to balance, because if you're writing something positive about a player with his contract, or a gripe he might have about playing time, it would appear you're taking his side, even if you're just writing a factual, even balanced news story. So, and the Cowboy management was not used to having a New Yorker in their midst, where our approach is more aggressive and fearless. And journalism changed a lot in Dallas during the 7.5 years that I was here, because the morning news as a whole, and me in particular, I didn't care about whether I upset people as long as I knew I was being fair. That was the whole thing. As long as you're fair, then you don't have anything to apologize for.
Exactly.
Cheap shots, or you're being critical. I always, whenever I wrote something critical about a player or a coach or whatever, I always made sure to show up that day that it was in the newspaper, because otherwise, my term is, otherwise if you write something like that and then you don't show your face for 2 weeks, it's like you're a hit and run specialist,
Right.
And I don't think that's the way you should do it. If you have the courage and convictions to write it, then you should be courageous enough to face the person that you've been critical of, and I always did that. So I think the players really respected me for it, and eventually management realized that I was just trying to be fair and do the right thing.
No, definitely. So I want to fast forward a little bit, because obviously we could spend hours talking about just the different things that have happened, but that's what your book's for. And I implore everybody listening to this to go out and get the book. But I want to fast forward to current day. Now I was watching you on The Herd last week. Actually, you came on and you were talking to Colin, and I love Colin. He's got a great mind on him. He definitely thinks outside the box. And I heard you guys talking about Jason Garrett and Jerry being letting Jerry be Jerry and kind of letting him play with his toy. And when I heard you say that, it's one thing that me and Paul have actually been really wondering, because every year you hear people say Garrett's on the hot seat, but I've always been like, no, if he was any other coach or any other owner, yes. But now that things are starting to look up and down this year, and they're very inconsistent. I mean, 1 week they look terrible. The next week they blow out the Jaguars. If this season continues to be inconsistent, we don't see a Dak from 2016 Dak, because that's what Jerry wants. Is Garrett going to be on that hot seat?
I think, Michael, it depends. It depends what kind of 8-8 they are, or 9-7, or 7-9. There are different degrees of mediocrity, and if by the end of the season they're playing really well, then I think he stays. If they're 7-9 because he made a bunch of decisions like he made in Houston a couple of weeks ago by not going for it on 4th down in overtime, then I think he's in trouble. So I think it's more. I don't think there's a definitive answer right now. There was somebody tweeted the other day that Jerry was going to give Garrett a contract extension, and Jerry didn't deny that it eventually was going to happen. He just denied that it was anything that was being considered at the moment. And in that case, I do believe him, because I think if the Cowboys really have a bad season, and they're only 6 weeks into it, so there's more than half of it left, I think the pressure is going to be intense on Jerry to change coaches. But I will say this: it's going to take a lot. He really likes him, and like I said on that show, Colin's show last week, he's very comfortable with Garrett, because Garrett just lets Jerry be Jerry, and he understands that if Jerry's the only one who feels somewhat that way about a player, that you can always talk him out of it, because he is reasonable. So I think they have a very good working relationship. They just haven't won enough.
Mm-hmm.
So what's Jerry really like? I mean, we always hear how I guess overbearing he is in that organization, and how it's his show and he runs everything. How does that really work?
Well, I think that he delegates, and I think he's willing to be talked out of bad decisions, where he's the only one who wants to draft Johnny Manziel, and he wants to draft him desperately. And his son Steven and the others in the room just told him it's a bad decision. You're the only one who wants to do it. We just can't do it. Now, if Jerry wanted to do it, he just would have went ahead and done it because he's the owner of the team. But he's reasonable enough that he trusts the people who are paid to be his experts. And if everybody's on one side of the fence and he's the only guy on the other, he's not going to overrule them just because he's in love with Johnny Manziel. As it turns out, it's a good thing they talked him out of that.
Right, as a Cleveland Browns fan, I can tell you that that's not something I was very happy about. But we'll let that stay in the past.
Yeah. So I know this isn't Cowboys related, but I did want to bring it up because I saw it on your Twitter feed today because I do follow you on Twitter. I see you going back and forth with some people that are saying that Eli is not a Hall of Fame quarterback. And this is funny because I've had this conversation with many people because I personally believe he is a Hall of Fame quarterback. I don't believe he's first ballot. But since you are a Hall of Fame voter, I'd love to hear, not only what made you kind of had that discussion on Twitter and get into that discussion, but also just I've never spoke to a Hall of Fame voter. I don't even know how someone becomes a Hall of Fame voter. So I find that to be extremely interesting. I'm sure my viewers have no idea either. So this is something new. So also, if you could tell us a little bit about like how does one become a Hall of Fame voter? What is that like?
Okay, well, the Twitter conversation was sparked by a column that I wrote in The Athletic this morning, in which I presented the case that, if Eli gets replaced as the Giants starter at the end of the year, it could lead to him retiring after the season because I know he doesn't want to play for another team. So that was just a little bit of a hypothetical. And then eligible to be in the Hall of Fame 5 years after his career is over. Mm-hmm. So I just presented the argument in my column for The Athletic about why I think he's a Hall of Famer. And I will vote for him on the first ballot. But I also presented what the argument would be against him. And to me, the determining factor is really that with the Super Bowl on the line twice against the Patriots, the first time against a team that was about to, on the verge of being 19-0 and being called the greatest team in NFL history, he took the Giants down the field and scored. Yeah, I know it was lucky because of the Tyree catch, but Eli did a great job.
He escaped the pressure. He almost, he should have been sacked. Definitely, there was a lot on him as well.
Absolutely. And then 4 years later, he takes him down the field again against the Patriots, and they get the winning touchdown. So to me, what else I know you wanted a better regular season career and more consistency and more playoff opportunities for the Giants with Eli as the quarterback. But the bottom line is, guys, what else do you want from a Hall of Fame quarterback that in the Super Bowl, with your team trailing with 2 minutes to go, you take him down the field against a really good team and get the winning touchdown? That to me is a Hall of Famer. I know, again, it's a small sample size, although in both those years in the playoffs, he played very well. Giants had to win 3 games each time to get to the Super Bowl. 5 of those 6 NFC playoff games were on the road. I understand the argument against him. I just don't happen to agree with it. As far as becoming a voter, I've covered the league since 1978, and I've been on the committee now about 10 years. And I had to wait my turn because the New York voters had been entrenched for a long period of time, both excellent football writers that deserved the vote, and one of them stepped down. They asked me to take his place. So that's pretty much how it happens.
Okay.
There's one voter from each of the 32 cities, and then there's 16 at-large voters who are, respected, longtime NFL journalists. So you have the 32 plus 16. That's how you get 48.
Okay. And no, I just want to let you know, I do agree with you about the Eli thing. The only reason I said is I just didn't know about first ballot is because it really depends on, I guess, who's in the class with him. That plays a big factor. But I tell Paul this all the time, and we've had these conversations, that when I look at the Hall of Fame, and I've heard someone say it before, the most important thing to me is can the NFL be what it is today without that person? And Eli did do what he did. The wild card teams, driving down there, the catch, the undefeated Patriots getting defeated. I mean, all of it is historic. I don't really have much more for you because I don't want to keep you too long. I know you have your book signing today, which is in Dallas. And are you on a book signing tour right now? Or are you going to be traveling around?
Yeah, I mean, I did one last night. Then tonight at Barnes & Noble near North Park. Then tomorrow night, Thursday night at the Star, and Jason Witten and Everson Walls are going to be there with me.
Oh, hey, to my viewers, if you heard that, Jason Witten will be there at the Star tomorrow in Frisco with Gary here to do a book signing.
Yeah, and Everson Walls will be there also for older Cowboy fans who remember him, and he was a Hall of Fame finalist this year. And then Friday night, I'm going to be in San Antonio, Saturday in Houston, and Sunday in Austin, and Sunday night back in New York.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, no, Paul, do you have anything for Gary?
No, I just really want to thank you for coming in today. You've been a great guest, and we appreciate your time. Oh, well, thanks a lot, guys. I appreciate you asking me to come on.
Definitely. So everybody, you can find Gary here, like I said, on Twitter at Gary Myers. That's MYERS. Sorry, NY at the end. So for New York. Also on Amazon, you can find his book. Again, it's How About Them Cowboys. You can find it at all of your bookstores, Barnes & Noble being one. As we know, there's not many bookstores left. I think I even saw it on Audible as well. If you have a subscription there. And also, hey, he's got other books out there. Like we said, New York Times bestseller, Brady vs. Manning. He's got Coaching Confidential, The Catch, My First Coach. So, I mean, there's a lot of work that he has. Make sure you guys go out there and check it out. And if you're in Dallas like me, because I know a bunch of my friends and fellow, sports fans out here, head to the Star tomorrow in Frisco. Check him out and definitely participate in this because, I mean, Cowboys, you're going to have Witten there. You're going to have who else did you say was going to be there?
Everson Walls. And then if they hear this in time, Michael, if they hear in time today to come out and see Ed Werder, who used to be at ESPN, and the Dallas Morning News will be with me at 7:00 at Barnes & Noble. So, and we'll have a nice football talk there to engage fans in some conversation.
Awesome. Well, I know I'm going to be trying to make it. I'll make sure that I post it as well on my social media so people know about it.
Paul's flying into Arizona, right?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I'm actually hopping on a plane right after this conversation.
There you go.
Hopefully he gets out here soon. But all right, guys, we're going to go ahead and get this back to the podcast where you're going to keep hearing myself and Paul. We enjoyed Gary here coming out. You guys, we'll see you in a minute.